Oh hi, thanks for watching my video. I've been asked a few times about what my unpopular Sims opinions were, and I've never made a video on this before, mainly because I didn't think I had that many unpopular opinions. But then, when I thought about it, I realised that actually, I had quite a lot of them. So for today's video, we are going to be counting down my top unpopular opinions for The Sims. I would love to know in the comments which ones you agree or disagree with. Let's begin. I would like a closed world. So when I say closed, I mean closed in terms of travelling from one world to another. In The Sims 4 you can easily travel between worlds, and although at times it is convenient, it does come with drawbacks. When every townie has free range to explore any world at any time, you end up having pretty unrealistic situations. For example, when a Sim from Sulani walks down the cobbled streets of Windenburg in a beach dress and flip-flops, or when Vlad the Vampire is hanging around the playground in Oasis Springs. Most pre-made Sims are dressed in a way that is suitable to their world, and it breaks the immersion when they turn up in the most unlikely places. What I would prefer would be that all Sims that were not in an active household should be locked to their own world. In future Sims games, I would like it if active households could travel between worlds, but there should be planning involved. Like maybe they'd have to travel to an airport lot and pick a destination from there. And even then the active household can only stay in hotels, or they can stay with a household that they already have a friendly relationship with. I know that adds hassle and time to the travelling process, but selfishly, I would much prefer to have a more complicated but more realistic way of travelling from one world to another. Equally, I think active households who have relationships with Sims living in another world should be able to invite them to stay over for a couple of nights. For my proposal to work, it would mean that every world needs to be significantly bigger. There would need to be enough going on in every world to warrant less travel between worlds. This means that with any new expansion packs that would include new lot types, we should be able to place those lot types in any world. Career promotions should be quicker. So I know that having career promotions drawn out is a bit more of a realistic way of playing, but I just much prefer the way it was done in The Sims 1 and 2. In those games, you could get promotions one day after another if you wanted. I just like the ability to choose. I want to decide whether I take my sweet time building those skills and waiting a few days for a promotion, or whether I want to challenge myself and manage my Sims time well enough to get promotions one day after another. For me, it just adds a little more challenge to the game. And the way The Sims 4 did career progression is just too boring and drawn out for me. I don't think making it take longer to get promotions adds any challenge at all. It just makes the experience a lot more tedious. So there's another one. Give the player more control over their Sims' careers. I don't like story progression. There is something quite nice about having story progression. You know, it makes the world feel more alive. You get to see how your Sims progress and what sort of choices they make. But for me, it's more of a novelty that I'd rather go without. The Sims 4 story progression is a complete joke. There is zero logic to anything Sims do, but even when it comes to The Sims 3, which, in my opinion, did story progression very well, I still feel like I would much rather have full control over how my Sims' lives progress. I like the way time just stops in The Sims 2, and you can play rotationally and choose exactly when certain Sims age up. And you can leave one of your favourite households behind for a few Sim weeks, knowing that at any point you can go back and pick up where you left off. I guess it's just a trade-off. You can either have story progression and have less control, but have a world that feels more alive, or you can fully control every household, but you don't get any surprises. Which would you rather have? I'd love to know in the comments. I would be happy to have less choice in build and buy. So this is probably more applicable to Simmers who are collectors like me, when it comes to The Sims 4, there are too many buy objects. Build is okay, I'm happy with the build options, but there are way too many options for buying the same thing in buy mode. I would much rather have fewer options than what we have. Even half of The Sims 4 buy catalogue is too much stuff. It wouldn't be so bad if everything was different, but so many things are exactly the same. I just don't think we need 15 activity tables. I would much rather have 6 different kids' activity toys that all did different things than 20 versions of the same thing. Whenever I furnish homes in The Sims 4, I just find it so overwhelming, and often there are things that I want to place, but they're so difficult to find because of the sheer amount of stuff, even with the search tool. So yeah, I'd be happy with less. I would be happy to go without occults. This, I'm sure, is a very unpopular opinion. I don't really like having occults in the game. That's not to say that I don't want to play with occults, I just don't think that they should be in the main Sims game. In my ideal world, and don't worry because this will never happen, but in my ideal world there would be a separate Sims game with a similar aesthetic to the latest main game. Kind of like when The Sims 2 made Pet Stories, Castaway and Life Stories, or how The Sims 3 did Medieval. Whenever I play with the current occults in The Sims 4 and follow the progression system, it just makes me feel like I'm playing a different game entirely to The Sims 4. I would love to see a Sims 5 magic pack that is completely separate from The Sims 5, but it would include a massive magical world that is occupied by all of the well-known occults, like vampires, werewolves, fairies, witches, and that way your game is completely dedicated to paranormal-style gameplay. Like I said, I don't see this happening ever, but I would just like to have some separation from the rest of the game, whilst still being able to enjoy occults. I suppose an alternative to this would be if The Sims 5 followed my previous recommendation for unplayed Sims to be tied to their world. At least if we had that, then occult Sims in the main game wouldn't be so disruptive, and it would still feel like a separate thing in some way. Sims don't need mobile phones. I know. Sims use their mobile phones for everything. But it doesn't need to be this way. It's not too late to change. So, I do have a proposal, and it's pretty bold. I think in future Sims games, you should have an option in Create a Sim, just a simple tick box that asks whether or not your Sim will have a phone. If the box is ticked, then your Sim will have a phone available to them like normal, and they can use it for the same things they use it for in The Sims 4. Except travel. They should have a car for that. But for Sims that don't have the box ticked, they will start the game without a phone, meaning that they might have to work a little bit harder for certain things. For example, elder Sims might instead have a wall phone that they use, which would give them limited access to the same things as Sims with mobile phones, but if they wanted to use a camera, they'd have to go and buy that separately. I feel like this would add a bit more challenge, and it would also make the game more realistic. Plus, it would come in handy if you're playing through some kind of historical challenge. Sims that don't have phones could also have the option at any time to buy a phone from the general store and have it work as normal. There should be options as well, like basic phone that just does calls and texts, and then maybe 2 or 3 more options that allow Sims to do even more. That way, maybe teen Sims might end up having a want to go and buy the best mobile phone from the store and trade in their old one. I feel like this sounds very elaborate for a single phone, but if you think about it, is it really? Bearing in mind that the phone has become such a crucial and large part of gameplay now, so for something that is used so frequently in the game, it deserves to have more bulked out gameplay around it. I do not want randomly generated townies. I know that townies make the world feel more alive, but honestly, other than the base game townies, I'm happy to go without. I, like many other simmers, use lots of custom content, and when they're randomly applied to townie sims, they just look ridiculous. I would rather spend several exhausting hours making every single sim and family in my save file than have my towns automatically populated by clowns. I almost feel like a lot of my unpopular opinions suggest that I just want the game to take seemingly a big step back, with the lack of story progression, making it harder to travel and making every sim from scratch, and to be honest, I think that actually is what I would like. I kind of just want the future Sims games to be more like The Sims 2. I really don't mind having things take longer and require more effort if it makes sense. I'm happy to go out of my way to send my Sims to the grocery store every time the fridge needs restocking. I'm happy to send them clothes shopping every time they need new clothes. And I'm happy to make every sim individually because to me the effort is worth it for the payoff. The reason why I'm not happy to spend extra time and effort doing things in The Sims 4 is because there's no payoff. The point I made about career progression kind of proves that. So, let's move on to my last unpopular opinion. I don't want my Sims to autonomously leave the house. So, I'm not totally against the idea of an open world, and by that I mean the world that my Sim is actively living in. I feel I should have clarified that because earlier I was talking about travel between worlds. I think The Sims 3 did open worlds very well, mainly because my Sims didn't leave the house outside of work or school without my input. Most of the time my Sims were home unless I told them to take themselves out for dinner or something. Yet somehow, even though The Sims 4 doesn't have an open world, it just has open districts, it still managed to be fucked up. I hate that my Sims just wander around aimlessly for no reason. I hate having to click on my Sim icon to find out where the hell they went. This is especially the case in San Myshuno, when Sims constantly use the elevator to wander the streets. I would be happy to have an open world, so long as my Sims don't autonomously wander around. If they leave the house, it should be because I've asked them to. I don't want to be looking around trying to find my own Sims like some kind of chump. So, those are my unpopular Sims opinions. I'm so curious to know what your unpopular opinions are. Out of all of the things I've mentioned, is there anything that you think just wouldn't work? Can you think of anything that I may not have considered? I would love to know in the comments. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. You know I love it when you do that. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.